This video deepens the 3 applied games used in clinical sessions. As previously shown, after entering the game session PIN code, the software presents the 3 options available. Topological categories, Infinite Runner, and Space Adventure. The games have been developed based on the therapeutic and educational needs posed by a team of experts in ADHD treatments. Each game has different levels of complexity and works on specific skills. The proposed solutions allow an executive functions holistic training. As the level's complexity increases, it is possible to train more and more skills at once. This allows the therapist to provide a customized and progressive training based on the patient's needs and abilities. Each time the player carries out a game task, the system is able to store the game performance and to provide positive or negative reinforcement feedback to the player. The first game is called Topological Categories and is played through the use of an headset for virtual reality, so the patient is completely surrounded by a virtual environment in which it has to solve tasks related to specific topological categories. Remember, before starting the game, make sure that the equipment and its software are running. The game has 3 different locations: a bedroom, a garden, and a classroom, with 6 levels of increasing difficulties in which it is possible to train at first single topological category and then more topological categories combined with attentive functions such as planning ability, the attention span, focus, memory, and waiting ability. Besides the location on the level, the therapist can set several parameters, such as the number of tasks to be realized during the level, the duration in seconds of the written task in the game scenario, or the possibility to activate or deactivate the task audio. Some parameters can be activated depending on the level selected. For example, from the 3rd level, the therapist can select the duration in seconds of the traffic light, that is the amount of time that the player has to wait before it's free to move. From the 5th level, the countdown duration can be set, that is the amount of time that the player has available to solve the task. Let's see some examples of game levels. In this scene, you can see what the player sees in the headset, in this case, the bedroom location. Before any task, the player has to find the blue arrow in order to be positioned correctly. As you can see, the player can read the required task, in this case, take the ball inside the box away from the armchair, is presented inside the balloon, while the text that you see below does not appear in the game scenario of the player, but it can be seen by the therapist on a second screen. In this way, the therapist can see what the player is doing. Every time the player solves a task, he gets a feedback like "good job." As previously described, the tasks concern the learning of topological categories, such as the positioning of specific item or the player itself with respect to other item. Here you can see the second location, that is a playground. In this case, besides applying the requested topological categories, in some level there is an active countdown, that is the amount of time in which the player has to solve the task. This duration is set at the beginning of the level by the therapist. This is the 3rd location, that is a classroom. Here you can see an example of level with a traffic light. The player has to stand still until the light turns green. Otherwise, he receives a negative reinforcement feedback. The balloon always shows the task, such as take the book inside the box near the door, as well as the sentence, Do not move if the traffic light is red. In some level, both the countdown and the traffic light are present. The second game is called Infinite Runner and falls within the Excel game category. That is a game that is based on the physical involvement of the player. In the Infinite Runner game, the player will run on the spot and move left and right using his body to avoid obstacles or catch specific requested items. The game has two different locations, a country road and a city street, and 11 levels in which it will be possible to enhance the learning of semantic categories, the motor coordination, the attention span, the respect of the rules, and the ability to wait. At the same time, the game allows to eliminate the excess energy that characterizes this kind of patience. The game requires the use of a motion sensing device, so remember to check if the equipment is connecting and operating before using the game. At the beginning of the game, the therapist can set different parameters, such as the activation or deactivation of the task audio track, the patient's age, or the automatic run, that is a parameter that can be used with patients with mild motor problems. In this way, the patient has only to move left and right in order to play. After the setting, the therapist can choose the level to be played. For each level, a tooltip is available, describing the number and the type of tasks, as well as the semantic categories explored. In some level, when the type of tasks changes, there is a tutorial available. Of course, the therapist can decide whether to skip it or not. For example, here we can see the third level, where the player has to avoid obstacles and catch the stars shown at the top of the screen. At the beginning of the level, the player has to raise the right arm in order to be identified and avoid losing the body tracking. As the player starts to run on the spot, the avatar starts to move in the game scene, mimicking every shift done. As you can see, this level allows to work on the identification of specific semantic categories, such as the colors, but at the same time, it trains the visual motor coordination and allows to unleash the excess energy that those players have. Each time the player catches the right or wrong item, it is a positive or negative reinforcement, as well as both the counter of items taken and the available lives is constantly updated. In the last 3 levels, there is a different game mode. Here you can see an example. In this level, the player has only to move left and right in order to catch the item required. Since they don't require to run on the spot, this level can be used also with players with minimum motor problems. Besides catching the right item, the player has to avoid obstacles in the shapes of bees and the other items that come against him. In this way, it is possible to train other semantic categories, such as fruits, colors, and emotion. The third game, Space Adventure, can be played by using a motion sensing device or a mouse device. In this game, the player plays the role of a young astronaut that has to overcome different challenges to get to the alien planet. The game allows to work on the ability to plan, problem solving, the attention span and the short-term memory, as well as the ability to reflect on the cause-effect relation of its own actions. Within the game, the therapist can choose to activate or deactivate the task's audio, choose between motion sensing and mouse device, and in the first case, indicate if the player is right or left-handed. As you can see, there are 7 levels, and for each of them, 3 different degrees of difficulties are available in order to adapt the game use to the player ability. Let's see an example of game level. Each level starts with an introduction that puts a new element in the game story. After choosing the degree of difficulty, the explanation of the task is shown. In this case, the player has to look at the sequence of pictures that mimics the spaceship launch sequence. In order to realize the task, the player has to grab the correct item with a mechanism of closing opening hand and put it in the empty boxes. In this other example, the player has to cooperate with its crew by giving the right instrument to the right person. The same instrument will be used later in the game to face challenges. In this case, other than learn how to associate the correct shapes together, the player learns how to collaborate with other people and later how to rely on them. Thank you for watching this video. If you want more information, please write to info@iamhero.eu.